Very pleased to be joined on the line right now by the head coach and GM of the Merritt Centennials. Luke Pierce is with us. Luke, thanks so much once again for taking the time to chat this morning.
Yeah, my pleasure, Brian. Thank you.
So a pretty busy time continues for you guys. You've got one last game out of this stretch of 8 in 12 days coming up tonight against Nanaimo. Before we get to that game, let's look back at last week. Kind of interesting that you were going into the last week of the month with a record of 5-2-1-1 in January. All of a sudden, it ends up 5-6-1-1. Maybe talk about how the week broke down.
Yeah, it was obviously not a great week for our club results-wise, and I think you can officially call it a bit of a funk that we're in right now, and it's been a little bit of time since we've had that, and we hadn't lost back-to-back games in a long time, and we've got to work to get out of it. It's going to happen in the course of a year, and it's more about what you do to break out of it, and take it for what it's worth. And we're not invincible, that's for sure. So we're going to have to get back at it tonight, and hopefully we can break out of it here.
Now, one thing that a lot of people will look at is the fact that you've got so many games here in such a short period of time. Do you think fatigue has something to do with it?
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, looking at our last game against Prince George, I thought we had a tremendous, first period. Although we didn't, generate a ton of quality scoring chances, we did have a lot of, puck possession in their zone and spent the majority of the game down there. But as the game wore on, you could just see it in the guys that that extra little bit of push just wasn't there. And these are 16 to 20-year-old kids here, and playing 8 days and 12 days is a lot of hockey, and we've tried to go as light as we can. We even took yesterday off for practice, so trying to give them a bit of rest. But at some point, we've got to find a way to get through it. I mean, every team has had a busy stretch in their schedule, and other teams have found a way to be successful still. So we can't really use it as the only excuse.
The last time we saw a funk like this for your club, it was winless in 8 games back in October, and at that point, you didn't have a whole lot of veterans on this club in terms of 20-year-olds. Now you've got Blaine Bokenfour here, you've got J.P. Whitcop here, in addition to, of course, the job Steve Tresera is doing. How much right now do you rely on your veteran guys, not only the 20-year-olds, but also guys that have played in this league before, on breaking out of it?
Yeah, I think obviously they have to be the guys that we look to, and I think they've done a pretty good job for the most part here. And our last game, I thought that Steve and Blaine again, and along with JP, were probably some of our best players. And for those guys, it comes with the territory, and they've been through it before, so they know what's necessary to turn things around. And at the same time, it's kind of last-ditch effort for them. I mean, this is their last real go at it, and they're not going to take many nights off, that's for sure. So we do have to rely on them for the leadership, and hope that our young guys can kind of grasp the concept sooner than most teams have to, because we are still a very young and immature hockey group.
Well, and is that where this sort of lends itself to a pretty good experience for your young guys, knowing that they've got to learn at this point how to fight through this kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's it's going to be beneficial for them in the long run. But the point of it is you have to learn the lesson, and so far we haven't really been able to. And I think we had a really good meeting yesterday, and we talked about we're taking a lot of blame on ourselves, and the players individually are all you ask them a question about what was it that we struggled with on Sunday or Saturday, and they give you a bunch of answers that puts them at the forefront of the blame. And hey, that's a good character trait, but at the same time, they're not looking at the bigger picture as much. And we've talked about taking a lot of chances in the offensive zone. We're trying to create different things, and when you try new stuff, it's a risk and reward scenario, and we're taking a lot of risks right now, and we haven't really reaped the rewards. And they can't take all the blame for what's happening, and they have to look at the the bigger scheme and say, well, we're giving up chances because of the risks that we're taking in the offensive zone, and let's not get down on it. Let's just wait for our rewards to come and work harder for them. So I think that was a really good lesson for them yesterday, and hopefully they take it to heart.
Well, and you mentioned prior to this stretch of such a busy time when we were looking at the 6th place scenario, the fact that you were going to use this time to try out a few different things. Is that exactly what you're doing?
Yeah, we have for the most part. We've loosened up a little bit on our defensive structure and tried to be a little more creative, and it hasn't come through for us. But that's not something that you expect to happen overnight. Guys have to find out what works and what doesn't, where they might have to risk a little further, where they have to risk a little less, and it's all about the patience and looking at the process and not so much the outcome on any individual night. At the same time, as competitive people and athletes, they hate losing, and at some point we're going to have to rein in the things here and get back to what our strengths are, and at least get us back in the win column, because these guys, they desperately want to win games.
Well, and obviously it was your defensive prowess up until this point that you guys were really proud of. Now you've had 4 straight games where you've given up 4 or more goals, albeit one an empty netter against Prince George. So is that something that you think you might tighten up the reins once again?
Well, I think so, but we don't want to sacrifice the strides that we feel we've made on creating opportunities. And I think looking at the tape, although it doesn't show by offensive production, we're really close in a lot of things, and it's just fine tuning that last little bit of execution, and it should open up a lot more for us. So we don't want to throw all that work out the window and say, hey guys, let's just shut it back down and get back to defensive hockey. And hey, we're confident in the come playoff time, if we need to revert back to that and rely on it, that we can, and we know how to, and we will. But we want to make sure that we're not jeopardizing the opportunity to really become a more well-rounded group here.
Well, and I guess that's the situation, is that once you've got a structure that works for you guys, and that's that defensive side of things that you really sort of have down pat, at least going into January, and especially now that you're switching things up a little bit on the offensive side of things, it's much easier to go back to that than it would be to try something new once you're in a playoff situation.
Well, absolutely. It's a lot harder to, that's why we're using this, and you see how hard it is right now for us to create, offense and use some new system structure. And it doesn't happen right away. It's a process, and it takes time. So for teams that, are maybe thinking, hey, we got to be a more defensive group come playoffs, and they try to take just that week prior to the games to learn it, then they're not going to be very successful at it. So, we'll make sure we have the right amount of time late in the year to fine-tune exactly how we want to enter the playoffs, but at this point we're still kind of experimenting a little bit.
So now you've got a stretch here where you've got 3 Coastal Conference opponents. I would think for the players the mindset doesn't change at all, but how about for you guys as coaches? Do you approach these games outside of the division any different?
Well, I think during the course of a year you look at them as what we would call free points, and a win just gets you some bonus points, and a loss doesn't affect the standings from teams approaching you or getting a distance ahead of you. So that's the way you would approach them for the most part. But right now we're looking at them as necessities for us to get back on track and to get out of our so-called funk and especially reestablish our dominance on home ice and just work to build our confidence back up. So I think it's a good time of the year to have these opponents and people we don't see very often. We don't have to worry as much about what they do, because we don't have the time to break it all down, and we'll just focus on our own game and really try to reap the rewards of what we've been working on lately.
Now the Clippers, they've been struggling offensively as well. I think they've got 1 goal in their last 2 games or something like that. You shut them out in your lone visit to Frank Crane Arena with a 3-0 victory there. Do you think that it'll be a bit of a chess match here tonight?
Well, I think last time we played them, it was a lot different scenario. I mean, they were, had a lot of injuries at the time, and they're now in a fairly healthy, and they're also in a bit of a dogfight in the standings over there. So we expect them obviously to come out and play extremely hard and hungry. But at the same time, I think that we will have the opportunity here to not have to stress as much about giving up offensive chances against a team like Salmon Arm or Penticton or somebody like that can really burn you, and hopefully we can get some strong goaltending when we need it and get our offense